name is Joshua Terry. I'm the Director of Legislative and Political Action for CSEA. And with us is Alex George, who is one of our legislative representatives here in Albany, and Aurora Flavius, who's one of our legislative representatives as well. We are going to go through a presentation on kind of what got done, how it got done, why we chose this particular path, and a bit of other information. And we will be then at the end, we will do some questions and answers for things that we haven't answered. But feel free to throw those right into the Q&A box on the bottom of your Zoom browser. And we will be answering those once we get through. So why don't we jump right in? Because I know everybody, I'm sure, has stuff going on tonight. Just for background, just so we're all on the same page, Tier 6 was created in response to the Great Recession by Governor Andrew Cuomo back in 2012. And it was really a fundamental change to the way that our pensions are structured. I mean, it rapidly and greatly increased costs for employees, while at the same time forcing workers to work longer, pay more to get a lower retirement benefit. If you look at the comparisons that we have here, Tier 4, which I think most consider to be kind of the gold standard, or what we want to get back to in the future, 3% contributions for 10 years versus Tier 5, which is 3% contributions in perpetuity, in Tier 6, which is 3 to 6% for your whole career. Tier 4 had a 55-30 retirement. Tier 5, you can't retire before age 62 without penalties, and Tier 6 moved up even further. Tier 6 actually changed the value of your pension after 20 years. So Tier 6, it's only 35% of your final average salary, whereas Tiers 4 and 5 are 40%, which in retirement can obviously be worth tens and tens of thousands of dollars over the long term. And Tier 6 also created these very draconian early retirement penalties, the highest out of the three tiers that we're talking about here. They are absolutely atrocious. You lose the vast majority of your pension if you leave when you're 55 years old. And we know that for some of our jobs, that's important to be able to leave early. But, Tier 6 was retribution from Governor Cuomo. It really was put in place in a very vindictive way. And it was something that we opposed from its creation. I mean, I will be honest, I was here at the time. Every member of the public sector labor movement was opposing that bill until it finally passed on the floor of the assembly. We were there until 5 a.m, actively opposing that bill. But unfortunately, it passed, and it has been the law for all new employees since 2012. But during that time, since 2012, we have known and we have been fighting to make changes to Tier 6 as well as Tier 5, and we'll be talking about that. We know that there are changes that have to be made, because this does not serve as a recruitment tool. It does not serve as a retention tool. And so we have been waiting for the opportune times to make these changes. So when we saw opportunities, and if we can go to the next slide, in 2022, when we had Governor Hochul assumed the governorship from Governor Cuomo, and we thought that we had an opportunity to start making changes to Tier 6. So under the first change that we made, we changed the vesting period, which is the amount of time it takes for you to qualify for a pension, from 10 years down to 5 years. Not even the private sector, or the ERISA law, which governs private sector pensions, they don't even allow a 10-year vest. New York State was an outlier on this. And we thought, as a first step to try to dip our toe in the water to make change, this was kind of we'd say the easiest and easiest to understand one to do. And so we were able to accomplish that in 2022. The same year, we were also able to exclude members' overtime earnings from being counted when they calculate your contribution under Tier 6. So during the COVID pandemic, so 2020, 2021, we had a significant number of members that worked a tremendous amount of overtime in our state's hospitals, the mental health hospitals, OPWDD, around in all of our facilities. Our members worked a lot of overtime. Those overtime earnings were pushing them into higher brackets. So they were paying, if they were normally a 3 or a 3.5% contribution, they were paying 4.5%, 5.75%. It was fundamentally unfair, and we were able to do a law in 2022 that excluded that from the calculation. So their contribution was only based on their base salary. Well, they also had to pay contributions on the overtime, but it wasn't pushing them into a higher category. We were able to get that renewed in 2024 as well. But also in 2024, we took another step, working with all of the other public sector unions. We were able to change what the final average salary calculation is. It was your top 5 consecutive years under the original Tier 6. We were able to move it to your top 3 earning years. It's one of those changes that might not seem important in the moment, but when you go to retire and you are taking your top 3 versus your top 5, the average will be much higher, because it's a shorter amount of time. So our members, when you retire, your pension is potentially and likely going to be higher than it was under the old system, which will obviously give you more money in retirement and more financial security. So you can see here there's a pattern that we're making changes every few years. And as we entered 2026, we knew that it was going to be another year that we wanted to fight for additional reforms to these pension tiers. So in November, we launched a online survey, where we targeted Tier 6 members. We received over 5,000 contributions or 5,000 responses. And we listed out the 6 items that are on your screen: contributions, pension at 20 years, retirement penalties, calculating overtime, sick leave, as well as age and service requirements. And the information was really, it was enlightening. The most enlightening and most kind of critical thing that we found was, contrary to what I think a lot of us thought was going to happen, which that the age and service requirements would be the number one issue, more members actually ranked a 30-55 as the least important issue to them, as opposed to the people that put it as the most important issue. And I think that's really important to talk about. Why is that? We don't necessarily know the total answer, but the data that we have from the state and local governments is that the average age of a new incoming state worker, including a CSEA member, is 35 to 36 years old. And the average age of a new local government employee is around 30 years old. So they might look at a 30-55 and do the math and think, oh, that's not the best benefit for me. There's other things that would benefit me more, maybe lower contributions, just having a higher pension at 20 years, or being able to leave before 63 with a lesser penalty. So the top 3 issues that came out were the contributions, pension at 20 years, and the early retirement penalties. Those were what the top 3 ended up being. And that's not to say that any of these other topics, these other changes, are not important. Like, we are not saying that at all. All of these are important, and our goal over the long term is to make all of these changes. But drawing on the data that we received, we started focusing in on one particular issue, and that was the contributions. And you might ask why. Why did that become the topic? And it's because affordability is the word that every one of our members is saying across the state. We can go to the next slide, please. When we are polling members or talking to members across the whole state, and this is every corner of New York, this is every type of member in the public sector or private sector, age, political party, affordability is the number one concern of all CSEA members right now. It's rare to see such a unifying concern, but that is what it is right now. We know that inflation's up. We know housing costs, healthcare costs, childcare, just everyday expenses are going up, and our paychecks, right? They're not going as far as they used to. We all know that. So coupling that with the data that we got from the survey and the fact that tier six members pay more for their retirement in every single paycheck, um, we thought we are going to go after to lower the contributions as far as we can. Um, Again, retirement age and years of service, that matters, but it matters when they become eligible to retire. And we'll get into that in a little bit more detail. Uh, but contributions was something that we could do immediately to put money in our members' pockets that are in tier six. And we thought that was very important because it is a recurring thing. Every week or every 2 weeks when you were paid, if you were in tier six, our goal was to get more money in every one of your paychecks going forward. And so that's what we focused on, and that's what we worked with other unions to accomplish. Alex?
Yeah, thanks, Josh. So I get to talk about some of these monumental reforms that were included in this year's budget. And I will say that this is a huge win. What we got done was the largest pension reform since Tier 6 was created in 2012, to the tune of about $215 million in investment from the state each year. And so there were three main buckets of changes that I'm going to talk about today. So number one, and Josh alluded to this, the lower contribution rates. The way that this change is enacted, it actually allows about 90% of CSEA members to be put in the lowest contribution rate. It also increases the cap on pensionable overtime. So now more overtime will count towards your final average salary in retirement. And we extend the provision that prohibits overtime from being counted towards your contribution. So you're not pushed into a higher band just for working more overtime. And so let's get into the details on the contribution rates. So as Josh mentioned before, previously there was a rate between 3 and 6% based on your salary. And this is really important because this is money that comes out of your paycheck every pay period to contribute to your pension. And so if you look at the chart, the new rates actually put everybody who's making up to $75,000 in the lowest rate, 3%, and that encompasses about 90% of CSEA members. If you make more than 75, you're still getting a significant rate deduction. And the way that we should think about this is that every reduction here is actually an automatic raise. That is money that you will see in your paycheck as soon as this goes into effect on October 1st. And if you're a member who makes $45,000 or less and was already paying 3%, this impacts you too. Because what this does is it says, if you get a promotion or a raise, you're not going to have to pay more. More of that raise is going to go back in your pocket. This is going to affect every Tier 6 member, and it really is focused on affordability. On the retirement side, it increases the amount that members can contribute to retirement up to $30K. And I will note that this applies to both Tier 5 and Tier 6 members. And this is really, really important for our members that work a lot of overtime. And Josh mentioned this during the pandemic. There was a ton of mandatory overtime, and that still persists, especially in with a lot of different employers, thinking like OPWDD group homes, OMH, hospitals, local correctional facilities. This is a huge part of what our members do. And by increasing the cap and the amount that can be contributed to your pension, that means that more of that might be counted towards your final average salary in retirement, which means maybe a higher benefit when you retire. This really is just a fair treatment of earned overtime. And it helps, again, those workers that do work a lot of overtime, whether because of the nature of their job or because they're in understaffed positions. In addition to that increase, it also continues to increase that cap every year by 3%. And as I mentioned before, it still excludes overtime from being counted in your contribution rate calculation. So if you are a member who's working a lot of overtime, this is not going to bump you into a higher contribution rate bracket. And really overall, similar to what we were talking about with contribution rates, it lets you keep more of what you earn. And so in terms of what this means for members, I talked about this a little bit, but especially with the contribution rates, this is money that's going directly back into your pocket. This means if you're seeing a rate cut, that is savings that you are going to see every year for the extent of your career. It means that there's going to be more money in every paycheck. And for those folks that work a lot of overtime, as I mentioned, these reforms are going to mean a better pension in retirement because you can contribute more of that overtime earning to that final average salary. And so as Josh mentioned, really our focus this year was affordability. And that is really what these reforms aim to do and will do. They'll provide real financial relief for members. So Josh touched on this a little bit. I know a lot of you are aware that members in the teachers' retirement system got a different reform. They got the ability to retire at age 58 with 30 years of service. And we understand that members do want this, and this is something that we are going to continue to fight for moving forward. But just to talk a little bit more about why we opted to go in this direction with the contribution rates primarily, as opposed to the age and years of retirement. We know that affordability is an issue right now, and we wanted to put money back in members' pockets immediately. We also wanted to pursue a reform that's going to affect the most amount of members possible, and everyone in Tier 6 is going to be affected by these reforms, and members in Tiers 5 and 6 are going to be affected by the overtime provisions. Right now, if you are a member of Tier 5, the earliest that you could hit 30 years of service is 2040, 2042 for members in Tier 6. So we have at least 14 years to try to pursue a age and years of retirement like a 3058. And so with that understanding, we opted to do something that's going to affect members right now and really affect that affordability issue that we've been talking about.
Pension reform takes time, and we wanted to kind of let you visualize this with Tier 4, because like I said, I think we all look at Tier 4 as the gold standard. If we could get back to Tier 4, I think most of us would be pretty happy with a Tier 4 pension. But Tier 4 wasn't created in the current form. When it was instituted in 1983, it didn't look like it does now, the great plan that we all think about. So from 1983 until the 2000s, CSEA, along with all the other public sector unions, had to fight to go get things like the ending 3% contributions after 10 years, or reducing the early retirement penalties that were instituted when Tier 4 was first created. Even the COLAs on a pension when you are retired, those weren't created until the early 2000s. So it took about 17 years for Tier 4 to start taking shape into what it is now. And then you can see through the 2000s, we went into the Tier 5, and then we had Tier 6, and it's where we are today. But I hope we can all look at this and realize this is not a sprint. I mean, I wish we could just snap our fingers and make all the changes we need. But as Alex said, this change alone on the contributions and the overtime piece will cost the state around almost $250 million every year for our systems, for our retirement systems. If we wanted to do everything at one time, we are easily into the billions of dollars. So this gradual, methodical path is what they did for Tier 4. And I will tell you, it is what we are going to continue doing, what we're going to be doing now. Go to the next slide, Alex. So because we have, the first Tier 6 members, they still have years until they can retire with their full benefits. It's not, this is a long-term fight. I think a lot of people started thinking that this was it. Like, this is the only reform that's happening to Tier 6. After this year, we're all done. Um, that is 100% not the case. We were able to secure immediate, real financial relief in paychecks for all Tier 6 members, while we are also preserving our role in the long-term fight. And I think that is really important to remember that we are not done. This is going to continue because this was a very important win. It was important for what actually got done, but from a political point of view, from a perception point of view, and Alex, if we can go to the next slide, for a long time, at least while Governor Cuomo was in office, Tier 6 was untouchable. We could not make the changes because they were a hard no. But the changes that we made previously, um, as well as the ones this year, because this one is just so massive, this is really going to break that precedent. When we talk to the legislature, when we talk to the governor, everybody is acknowledging that Tier 6 needs and needed meaningful reform. We have kicked this door open so that legislators, they know what Tier 6 is, they know the need to reform it, and we are going to be able to work to kind of piggyback off of this change into the future to make additional changes. And if you look at the changes that we've made, if this quick chart, which we have a flyer on our website that is similar, it's a little bit flashier, you can see that we are making progress on this compared to where we were 14 years ago. The vesting period has changed, final average salary. We're fixing the overtime and contribution rates. These are all really critical components of having a good pension system and a good pension plan that will both serve as a recruitment, but really importantly as a retention tool for our public workforce, because we know we need to continue recruiting. We know that we need to continue, in retaining our employees in order to provide the services that New Yorkers demand that they receive in a timely manner. And without further changes, we know that we're going to have trouble doing that.
So what comes next? And I think we've talked about a lot of these things already. But now that we've, tackled contribution rates, there's a lot of other things that we're going to continue to pursue as we try to provide pension parity between tiers 4, 5, and 6. And so part of that is what we already talked about, lowering the retirement age in years of service, something like a 3058 or a 3055, fixing the early retirement penalties. As Josh mentioned, especially for tier 6, those penalties are really draconian and make it really unfeasible for members to retire before that age of 63. Increasing that pension calculation after 20 years to again match what tier 4 and 5 receive. And though we made a huge change this year in contribution rates, we still have our eye on the goal long term of getting that flat 3% for all tier 6 employees, the same as tier 5. And so this is a massive victory. But as Josh mentioned, this is not the finish line. This is not the end of the fight. Unfortunately, tier 6 is not fixed, but we are going to continue, working on that. And it's not just limited to these tier 6 reforms broadly. We are consistently working to provide an improved pension for our members that are in titles or work in areas where working till 63 is just not feasible. This year alone, we are really focused on getting a 25-year retirement plan for 911 and emergency dispatchers. We're working on similar pension bills for court officers. And that over the years continues to go on as we try to provide a fair retirement for some of these other workers that are, again, in jobs where it is just untenable to work until 63. But the fight continues. We should celebrate this win, but recognize that we all need to keep pushing as the years go on to make further reforms and get a fairer pension that's more in line with the gold standard tier 4 that we've talked about. And I do want to say that this was only possible because members got involved. Whether it be something like going to a meeting with a legislator to something as simple as sending an email or a postcard, every engagement and interaction mattered and really showcased the power of our union and the strength of our union to get these things done. And so that remains critically important as we continue this fight and is the only way that we're able to, get the state to make these massive investments. And so I would encourage you to continue to stay involved. And if you haven't been involved, please get involved. It's something as simple as signing up for This Week in Albany so you know what's going on at the state capitol and what CSEA is working on, sending emails and making phone calls when we reach out about some of our priority legislation and some of our Tier 6 efforts. Getting involved locally, whether it be with your unit or local PAC, or participating locally, I encourage you to contact your regional coordinator to learn a little bit more about that. But really, we can't do this without member engagement. And we saw this year as well with not only this issue, but a plethora of other issues that we've been working on. You folks have the stories, working where you work, doing what you do every day. That matters, and it matters to us, but it matters to the legislators. They want to hear what the impact of Tier 6 is. They want to hear about the impact of your working conditions in your job and all of these other things that really help us paint the narrative and get things done legislatively. And then, of course, I will always say it's very important to be involved politically, vote and elect candidates who support CSEA and support CSEA members. Election day is June 23rd and early voting starts soon. So I encourage you absolutely to get out and vote in this election, but certainly in elections moving forward as well. And again, I'll just reiterate, this only happened because we worked together and members were involved to get this done. So thank you to everyone who helped us along the way to get this major victory under our belts. And from there, we're happy to answer any questions. I know Aurora has been monitoring the question box there.
Okay, so first question that I received was a question asking if this was the most cost-effective way to work towards equalizing the tiers.
Yeah, I mean, I think I guess it depends on most cost effective. We were looking for something that gave some financial relief to as many CSEA Tier 6 members as we possibly could in the near term. So, I mean, that was kind of our guiding principle. And so I guess it just depends on what, the term means. But we thought this was the best route that we could go for during this legislative session.
And what I'll add to that is that, any of that laundry list of potential future reforms that we'll pursue, they're very, very expensive. And Josh noted this. In some of these in total are over $1 billion. And so it takes a lot of work, groundwork, and compromise sometimes to get some of these things done. And it continues to get more expensive as Tier 6 grows. But that's why we are, consistently over time making these changes because the cost is prohibitive to do it all in one swipe.
And I will say, I mean, listen, there is no perfect, besides repealing Tier 6 in full, no matter what we do, there will always be a portion of our members who might feel that it wasn't as applicable to them or it wasn't the best thing for their situation. And we acknowledge that. And so that is why we were looking at something that would capture as many CSEA Tier 6 members as we possibly could. Aurora?
Our next question asks, when will they be able to see the change reflected in their paycheck?
Yeah, great question. So the comptroller's office has to implement this. As you can imagine, I think they have 1,400 different employers that are part of the pension system in New York State. That's only for the employees' retirement system. So it takes a little bit of time for them to implement and start changing these contribution rates. So this will be in effect for paychecks issued on and after October 1st of this year. So 5 months, 5 months from today. No, four
And
months from
what
today. I'm sorry, 4 months from today.
and I'll just add to that because I'm sure that question is outstanding as well. The increase in the pensionable overtime cap that goes into effect on January 1st of 2027. The continuation of the exclusion of overtime in the employee contribution calculation that never lapsed, so that continues to this day.
Our next question asks if this change will disrupt the stability of our retirement system.
Yeah, I mean, I think that's a great question because at the end of the day, and I think everybody on this call, everybody attending, we all agree, we want to make sure that we have a fully funded pension system that will continue paying the benefits for those currently retired, but also the active employees that will retire in the future. So there is a balancing act of making sure the changes that we are making ensure that the fund can stay stable, because when we lower contribution rates for employees, that then puts a higher contribution rate on employers. And we are not saying we are against that. That is not something, we aren't out here defending the employers, but we also want to make sure there's a balance because we want to make sure that this fund stays strong. So we think that this proposal or the law that we changed, we think it actually does strike that balance. We think that we get tremendous benefit for CSEA members that are in tier 6, while also ensuring that the state is fully funding, state and local governments are fully funding their contributions to make sure that we have as strong as fund as possible. And I think, the comptroller announced, I believe it was last week, the pension fund earned 12% last year. We're up to almost $300 billion in the pension fund. It is strong. It's strong because we have a leader of Comptroller Tom DiNapoli at the helm of our state pension fund. And so, we're encouraged by his leadership, but also by the stewardship that he has in making sure that our employers are paying these bills when we make these changes.
Our next question asks, is it realistic to see a 2555 or a 2558 in the next 15 years?
I'm not going to sit here and promise that, right, that's going to happen, because that's not something we can promise. But I will say this: if you look at the pattern that we have been making incremental changes every 2 years to tier 6, and we have educated the legislature. We have a governor that obviously believes in tier 6 reform because she's signed off on 3 different rounds of this. I think that we are in a good position to continue making changes to our state's pension system, and changing the years of service, and the age, as we've talked about, is on our list. It is within those top issues that we know we have to address, and we are not giving up. So can I promise that we'll make those changes in the next 5, 10, 15 years? I can't promise anything. This is Albany. I can't promise that my wallet's going to be here when I go down to the Capitol, but it is something that I think that we are in good positions to continue making advancements on, going forward, especially if all of you continue to talk about it. And here's the other thing that we have going for us: tier 6 is only growing. The number of tier 6ers, right? I think it's about 2/3 of the state pension system are in tier 6 now. 2/3. That number is only going to grow. The tier 4s are slowly retiring. Tier 5 was kind of a short window. The number of people in tier 6 and the voices that will contribute to this fight are only going to grow over the next or in the coming years.
An attendee asks, how are workers assigned a tier?
Well, that's a great question. You are assigned a pension tier on the day that you join the retirement system. Usually for most CSEA members, that would be their first day of employment if they are a full-time employee. It's mandatory for you to be in the pension system if you're a full-time employee. So if you get hired, you're full-time, That first day of employment that decides what pension tier you're in. Anybody that has been hired on or after April 1st of 2012 is in tier 6. And then if you go backwards, there's different periods for the other tiers. If you are a part-time employee, if you're seasonal, you are not mandated to join the retirement system, but you are allowed to. We always tell everybody, if you ever take any sort of public employment, you should become a member of the retirement system, because once you lock in your pension tier, once you sign that form, they cannot give you a worse pension tier. So if next week they decide they're going to do a tier 7, if as long as you're a member of tier 6 right now, you cannot be forced to go into tier 7, which will likely have a worse benefit than what we have in tier 6. So that's how you're assigned to a pension tier.
Great. We have another question. Somebody asked what percentage of ERS members wanted contribution rates to be lowered compared to a 30-58?
So when we did this survey of tier 6 CSEA members, we had over 5,000 responses, and we had members rank on a scale from 1 to 6 the most important issues for them and the least important issues. And I don't have the number in front of me, but I will tell you, more members that took that survey put 30-55 or 30-50, whatever, last than had put it first. And that was what I had said earlier, which was there is in part an age issue here where the average age of a new state worker is in their mid 30s, and they would look at a 30-58 and not necessarily see the value. Local government, it's a bit different. They're early 30s, like age 30 is the average new employee. So they could see some benefit, but when it was averaged out, there were, if I remember right, there were at least 3 other items, and that was the contributions, the 20-year, the value of your pension at 20 years, as well as the reduced penalties for retiring before 63 that were higher than an age and service retirement change.
Another question. Somebody asked if this change is only for CSEA members.
So the change on contributions applies to a few different groups, a few different pension systems. It applies to everybody except the teachers. If you're a teacher, so if you are in the New York State Teachers Retirement System or the New York City Teachers Retirement System, these changes do not apply to them. They got their change in age and years of service. Everybody else, so the state employee retirement system, as well as police and fire, and the New York City systems, except for the teachers, received this change. So our brothers and sisters in DC 37, NYSCOBA, Council 82, they all received this same change as well.
Nice. A couple people are asking if the slides would be uploaded later on.
Yeah, so we have recorded this this webinar, and we will post this as well as the slides, hopefully by tomorrow to if you go to cscany.org/fix tier 6, we will make sure that it's up there, hopefully by the end of tomorrow.
We are all good for questions. I haven't gotten one in a minute or two, so.
Okay, and I'm sure people might have questions on, especially if you're from the state division, on the state contract. I think I had seen one pop up early on that. We are not going to take those questions because that is not our area of expertise. We know pensions, but we are not the state contract people. So those questions will be answered in due time. They will be doing local meetings, and I'm sure they'll be doing webinars with the negotiating team in the coming weeks to kind of walk through your questions on that. Is that it, Aurora? We think we're good?
I just saw another question come in. They're asking once again, when will they be able to see this change in their paycheck?
Yep, October 1st of this year. the new rates will go into effect once the comptroller's office can implement it and all the employers can abide by it.
All right.
Great. Well, thank you all so much for attending. If you have questions, please send us an email. That's our department email there at the bottom of the screen. Send us an email. You can call us here in Albany as well. You can call your regional coordinators. If you want somebody to come to a local or a unit meeting to walk through these changes and take these questions, we are more than happy to do that in any part of the state. Just get in touch with us. We love coming out. We would be happy to talk about this in as much detail as anybody wants. So please keep that in mind if you think that would be a useful tool for you. So thank you so much. Have a great night. And remember to get out and vote in the next few weeks. Thank you.